Now, it is my great honor to introduce Dr. Braxton, the director of the Center for the Study of African American Life and Culture. Dr. Braxton.
Good evening. Permit me to provide the occasion for our gathering. From the title, The Prophet Motive. There are moments and people who change the world. The civil rights movement in the United States, which reached an apex in the 1950s and 60s, was a world-altering moment. The movement exposed and began to correct the horrific inequities of a nation created through a financially lucrative slaveocracy, which the nation's founders ironically called democracy. Not only did the civil rights movement affect lasting attitudinal and legislative changes in the United States, but also the movement continues to serve as a paradigm for other liberation efforts, including Black Lives Matter, LGBTQ equality, and global movements for women's rights. In this sense, the civil rights movement was and is a world-altering moment. The most well-known leader of the civil rights movement was the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. King was a world-changing figure. The twin honors of being chosen as 1963 Time Magazine Man of the Year and the 1964 recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize demonstrated that he was a drum major for justice whose emancipatory echoes reverberated around the globe. Dr. King's status as a world-changing figure has created across the decades the unfortunate phenomenon of hero worship. Two consequences of this hero worship cause us to misunderstand and misrepresent Dr. King's life and legacy. First, hero worship blunts the sharp, even revolutionary edges of the audacious moral claims and political overtures of the movement that Dr. King inherited and led. As a result of those claims and overtures, Dr. King, in the words of the Negro spiritual, was rebuked and scorned. He was literally stabbed near his heart in 1958 and figuratively stabbed in his back at times by his own country, which sought to discredit him, if not destroy him. Second, this hero worship inappropriately removes Dr. King from the religious soil that nourished his soul and the soul of the movement. In other words, we laud the fruit of Dr. King's labor while ignoring the root that made the fruit possible in the first place. Let me be abundantly clear. That root was African American religion. The same religion that sustained the liberation longings of Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman, of Henry McNeil Turner and Frederick Douglass. African American religion bequeathed to Dr. King an appreciation of the sacred worth and dignity of all people, as well as a theological framework which understood sin and liberation in social terms. This theological framework made social protest priestly, prophetic, and redemptive acts. Protest marches were walking confessional booths designed to compel an arrogant nation to bend a contrite knee in atonement for its grotesque misdeeds. An African American religious community. Dr. King also learned that sublime art of African American sacred rhetoric, with its respect for everyday people and its propensity for poetic expression and vocal virtuosity. While Dr. King was a brilliant civil rights leader and shrewd political strategist, he first and foremost was an African American preacher and theologian. His "I Have a Dream" was not a speech. It was a sermonic riff, typical of many African American preachers. Dr. King's soaring oratory, picturesque images, and melodic tone were the cultural DNA he inherited from his African American religious ancestors, whose memory and presence we also honor. Dr. King's identity as a preacher and theologian motivates my reflections about the prophet motive. I believe if Dr. King were physically here this evening, he might administer an examination to us. For the examination, no pens, laptops, or other devices would be necessary. Dr. King would simply ask us to write our answers on the tablets of our heart. Here is the examination. Are you ready? How do you spell prophet? If prophet is spelled only one way for you and means only one thing to you, you may have academic training, but your moral education may be woefully incomplete. This evening, we acknowledge in an acute way the words of the Negro National Anthem. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughter. Dr. King was unfortunately only one of many who have been martyred in the movement. Heaven bids us also to remember, for example, those four precious girls: Addie Mae Collins, Denise McNair, Carol Robertson, and Cynthia Wesley. They were attending Sunday school on a September morning in 1963 at the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham when a terrorist bomb revealed that America was still savagely judging black children by the color of their skin and not by the content of their character. I repeat, Dr. King was only one of many who have been martyred in the movement. To the Birmingham Four in 1963, we also must add the Charleston Nine in 2015 at Mother Emanuel Church. These 9 were slaughtered as they read sacred scripture in what they thought was a sacred and safe place. The gravity of this moment of remembrance places a moral imperative upon us to rethink the spelling of prophet. Before we conceive of profit as something to give or receive, maybe we should talk about prophet being someone each of us should become. If we made being a prophet, the kind spelled Prophet, our primary motivation, how would our world change? Were Dr. King present physically tonight, his moral examination also would invite us to consider 2 additional questions. First, who are prophets? Prophets are people who see with their third eye and hear with their third ear. Language about a third eye and ear is not bizarre physiology, it's grassroots theology. Years ago, in an African American religious community I served, there was a wise elder, Brother Ivory Butler, who constantly admonished me, Reverend, investigate every situation in life with your third eye. Brother Butler was trying to inspire a prophetic sensibility in me. By third eye, he meant a profound moral discernment that penetrated beneath the surface to expose the truth of any matter. From that wise elder, I realized that one might be visually impaired physically and yet have moral insight that is 20/20. Not only do prophets see with their third eye, but also they hear with their third ear. Above the clamor of the culture's music, prophets have another ear tuned to melodies that sing justice and peace for as many people as possible. For prophets, in the tradition of Dr. King, any cultural melody that does not resound with an inclusive justice and peace is a dissonant 7th chord in need of harmonic resolution. Even while residing in a land they love, prophets critique a nationalism which triumphantly sings, God bless America, while the United States sponsors a number of economic policies that curse the so-called third world. Prophets are public investigators who courageously remind intellectuals, clerics, government officials, and corporate leaders that no person, institution, or nation has a monopoly on truth or a copyright on correctness. Dr. King's steadfast commitment to being a prophet burned with white-hot intensity in one of his most radical speeches, A Time to Break Silence, delivered at the Riverside Church on April 4th, 1967. Listen with your third ear for his prophet motive. Dr. King remarked, and I quote, "A true revolution of value will soon cause us to question the fairness and justice of many of our past and present policies. True compassion is more than flinging a coin to a beggar. It is not haphazard and superficial. It comes to see that an edifice which produces beggars needs restructuring." End quote. In our moral examination, there is one final question Dr. King would invite us to answer. How can we become prophets? We can become prophets by an unflinching commitment to righteous troublemaking. Now, most of you have tried to stay out of trouble. Now, by the power invested in me from heaven, I commission you to get into trouble. Please note, however, the qualifier I have used. I want you to get into righteous trouble. Righteous trouble is the friction produced when you tell the pharaohs and Caesars of this world that they too must give an account of their actions. Righteous trouble is the agitation that results from speaking the truth in love. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Still, I must warn you that righteous troublemaking and loving, vigorous truth-telling can be hazardous to your health. If the brokers of power cannot assassinate your body as they did to Dr. King, they may come for your character. I urge you to count the cost of being a prophet. In the language of the feminist cultural critic Bell Hooks, we become prophets when we are possessed of a yearning, an insatiable desire for the end of domination and oppression, even though such revolutionary changes might radically upset our comfort and privilege. regardless of your vocations in life. I urge you to work at being a prophet. Look with your third eye and listen with your third ear, and get in as much righteous trouble as you possibly can. If your primary motive is to be a prophet, you might die a beggar's death, or even a martyr's death like Dr. King. Nevertheless, because of your life, the world would be much, much